Discover the amazing hidden secrets of the Babylonian Empire. 7 transformative stories revealed. Hannah sat on the floor of her attic, surrounded by the dust of forgotten memories. She rifled through her late grandfather's belongings, a knot tightening in her stomach. She loved him dearly, but the oppressive weight of unfulfilled potential hung over her like a thick fog. Teaching history in a small Midwestern town felt like trying to push a boulder uphill, ignored by her colleagues and belittled by the administration. Here she was, a passionate educator, yet she was trapped under the shadows of apathy that enveloped her school. Grimacing, she plucked a box from a pile of old suitcases, the flickering light casting eerie shapes on the walls. Inside were letters, cryptic trails of ink that promised whispers of a long-lost legacy connected to the Babylonian Empire. Her heart quickened, a mix of curiosity and desperation surging through her veins. She could almost hear her grandfather's voice urging her to delve deeper. What if these stories, steeped in resilience and tenacity, could breathe life into her class? She imagined her students' faces, usually dulled by indifference, lighting up with intrigue. As she meticulously deciphered the letters, Hannah felt an electric thrill coursing through her. Each word painted vivid scenes of struggle and triumph, echoing the very battles her own students faced. Economic hardship, social prejudice, a world pressing in on them from all sides. But with every revelation, a swell of doubt overshadowed her excitement. Would the administration embrace her unorthodox teachings, or would they brand her a pariah? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The tension in her mind boiled as she began to outline her new lesson plans. Flip the classroom upside down? Yes, she envisioned pulling Babylonian narratives into their lives, igniting a fire of inquiry. But the specter of pushback loomed large. What if her boldness drew fire from the school board? And what would come of her career if they dismissed her methods as reckless? In the days that followed, whispers of unease grew louder. Concerned faces loomed in the staff room. Her colleagues exchanged disapproving glances, while the administration bolstered their defenses against her encroaching ideas. Doubt clawed at her stomach. Could her passion be misunderstood? Just as the Babylonians faced their unique challenges, so too do we confront our own, she asserted. Teaching history isn't solely about dates and events. It's about understanding our collective human experience. It's about helping students grasp that their individual stories are part of something bigger. Each slide of her presentation gradually turned from a silent testament to her initial failures into a voice of empowerment. The cracking of the facade began. A colleague shifted in her seat, nodding slightly, as Hannah highlighted the parallels between ancient and modern triumphs, culminating in a persuasive call to action, that they, as educators, had a responsibility to nurture the potential of every student. For a moment, she could sense the walls around her crumbling. Perhaps this journey was not just her own, but a collective awakening among her peers. Yet, as she elaborated on her vision, she caught sight of the principal's furrowed brow. The feedback that would come, she knew, was vital. Would he view her presentation as revolutionary or irresponsible? The time had come to face the music. As she wrapped up with a heartfelt appeal to embody the spirit of the Babylonians, boldness, resilience, innovation, she could feel the pulse of uncertainty racing through the room. The moment hung thick with anticipation, an electric tension sweeping through the audience. "Thank you for considering this perspective," she concluded, heart hammering in her chest. "I believe if we can inspire our students with such lessons, we can help them navigate their challenges and emerge victoriously." A split second of silence followed, and as she surveyed her colleagues, the anticipation shifted into apprehension. Hannah understood then that her battle was far from over. She had laid the groundwork, yet the stakes remained high. As the murmurs began, mixed with cautious applause, her gaze fell upon the principal once more. He stood, pinching the bridge of his nose, contemplating her every word. Would he champion her ideas, or would this bold step backfire? With bated breath, she awaited his response, resolved that whatever followed would mark the turning point in her journey as an educator. Would she finally find her voice, or retreat into obscurity? The moment of truth arrived. The principal's voice cut through the charged atmosphere like a knife. "Hannah, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but aren't you romanticizing a history that's better served through a more traditional lens?" His words, though laced with a semblance of respect, stung. Hannah felt her heart sink, the anticipation that had been brewing moments prior now evaporating into a swirl of uncertainty. "Sir," she started, forcing the tremor from her voice, "every story has layers. We owe our students the chance to explore those layers and see themselves within them. If we only present history as a sequence of events, we risk making it irrelevant." She could feel the weight of her colleagues' stares pressing down on her. Yet, instead of flinching away, she found strength in their collective gaze. It was as if she could hear half-formed thoughts echoing in the room, questions of their own longing for a narrative that mattered, that inserted them into the story, rather than relegating them to mere spectators in an outdated script. The principal regarded her thoughtfully, weighing her words. "Interesting perspective," he replied, a hint of an edge still present. "While I admire your passion, how do you plan to implement these ideas into the curriculum without losing sight of the academic rigor?" Hannah's pulse quickened. The question was fair, but it felt like a maze with no clear exit. She understood the importance of structure, but also the perils of teaching in a vacuum. Closing her eyes for a moment, she visualized the classroom not as an institution of confinement, but as a laboratory for exploration. "What if we did both?" she suggested. "What if we dedicated time to deep discussions, allowing students to engage openly with historical events while still adhering to a syllabus?" The murmurs transformed again, now threading through the audience like whispers of intrigue rather than doubt. Even the principal leaned forward, intrigued by the possibility she was floating. Hannah's courage surged again, emboldening her to share her vision for her students. The Babylonians faced limitations, and they evolved. They built upon their knowledge and shared it, leading to cultural advancements. If they succeeded in doing so against the odds, can we not provide a similar experience for our students? Help them to navigate their own struggles with resilience and innovation. With each word, she wove an image of a classroom that defied constraints, one that empowered students not just with knowledge, but also with agency. It was about instilling confidence, fostering critical thinking, and posing questions that went beyond rote memorization. They could take ancient challenges and frame them in a way that led to modern solutions. Let's enable them to voice their thoughts, to analyze and to debate, to see history not as static but as dynamic, she concluded, settling back with anticipation. The principal remained silent, his brow furrowed, but Hannah noticed his fingers tapping lightly on the desk, an unconscious signal of contemplation. He was considering it. Perhaps it had hit a valve within him, the notion of real engagement against the regimen of traditional methods. Suddenly, a voice broke the tension. "I like it," chimed in a younger colleague from the back, a rare nod of encouragement. "Hannah, what you're proposing could make us relevant. We need this." That affirmation felt like a crack in the wall, a breach that might allow fresh air to seep in. However, the principal's expression hardened again. Your ideas are revolutionary, but this is not an easily navigable path, Hannah. Are you prepared for the challenges that could arise? This could provoke a backlash, and critics will undoubtedly emerge. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. While others might falter at the daunting road ahead, Hannah felt a fire ignite within her. She was standing at the threshold of influence. "I am ready," she asserted. "I see this as a chance to evolve not just our teaching, but also our students." The principal's eyes narrowed, as if probing the depths of her resolve. "Then you must take responsibility for what comes next. I expect a plan, Hannah. Show me the practicalities." Hannah felt a surge of determination. This was more than just her moment. This was an opportunity to redefine her role as an educator. "I will," she replied, the words spilling from her with newfound conviction. As the meeting concluded and her colleagues lingered, curiosity etched into their expressions. A dizzying mix of anticipation and anxiety overwhelmed her. They were looking at her as if she carried the spark that could light the way for them all. She had to cultivate that spark into a blaze. In her mind, the blueprint laid out plans for workshops, discussion forums, projects, real and tangible. Yet beneath her determination, threads of doubt lingered. Would her colleagues rally behind her? But as she gathered her notes, her thoughts turned inward. This was no longer about the classroom alone. It was her career on the line, too. Hannah tied her focus to her purpose, a flame now fanned to life. As she stepped into the corridor, determination swept over her again, surging in waves. Action was imperative, and as she plotted her next move, she understood that the journey had just begun. What sort of plan would she construct that not only informed but truly transformed? And what roadblocks awaited her in the process? An unsettling sense of urgency began to gnaw at her as the answers loomed just out of reach. Hannah sat at her cluttered desk, chin resting on her clasped hands, eyes glazed over with thoughts that whirled like leaves in a storm. The principal's challenge echoed in her mind. "I expect a plan." She could feel the weight of that expectation, not just as a mere request, but as the defining moment in her career. The path was uncertain, filled with potential pitfalls and critics lying in wait. A pulse of anxiety crept into her resolve. She reached for her worn notebook, its pages crammed with ideas, sketches, and unfiltered thoughts. This was a tangible representation of her journey, her fears, her dreams, and now the burgeoning ambition to galvanize change within her school. She flipped through the pages, her fingers tracing the words she had scribbled in fervor. Workshops on critical thinking, student-led discussions framed around historical events, and projects that aligned ancient wisdom with contemporary issues, all sketched out in her vision, but they needed substance. What could she offer that was both innovative and practical? The need for clarity lit a fire within her. She had to narrow down her concepts to a structured framework that would appeal to both educators and administration alike. She imagined a syllabus that was interspersed with historical narratives and critical discussions, a dual approach that respected tradition while inviting innovation. These were seeds waiting to take root. As she began to outline her plan, she experienced a flicker of doubt. Would her colleagues accept her vision? She recalled their faces during the meeting. Some were skeptical, but others shared glimmers of interest. In the back of her mind, she questioned whether they would rally behind her or shrink away from the potential backlash. What if they saw her as a disruptor rather than a reformer? The thought tightened her chest. But then she remembered their silent nods, the timid but real support from that younger colleague. Perhaps this was not solely her journey. She was crafting an opportunity for them all to step outside the confines of traditional education. She took a deep breath, anchoring her thoughts. To move forward, she needed allies. Engaging her fellow educators was not just smart, it was essential. What could be better than rallying a collective vision that brought them together? Hannah grabbed a fresh sheet of paper and began jotting down names of colleagues she would approach, those who might be eager for change, who shared her passion for the students' future. Involving them in the development stage could provide valuable insights and create a sense of ownership over the revolutionary approach. Once she had a list, the next step formed clearly in her mind. She would host an informal brainstorming session. The thought energized her spirit, allowing her to envision a gathering where ideas flowed freely, unimpeded by doubt or hierarchy. It would be a place of camaraderie, where collective creativity flourished, with each contributor illuminating a different facet of the curriculum. That sense of shared purpose would lend her proposal the strength it needed to withstand scrutiny. As she fleshed out the details, a new realization struck. She wasn't just igniting transformation, she was also positioning herself as a leader within her institution. The potential ramifications of this movement felt exhilarating and overwhelming in equal measure. Purpose surged through her veins. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, casting long shadows across her office, Hannah stood tall with fresh resolve. A sense of duty rippled through her. This wasn't merely about her advancement. This was about paving a path for her students, emerging as facilitators of understanding rather than followers of outdated techniques. Grabbing her phone, she began drafting an email to her colleagues, inviting them to a meeting that she hoped would spark conversation and collaboration. But just as she hit send, a nagging thought lurked in her mind. What if this backfired? What if she had overlooked critical elements? Those questions surfaced the lurking vulnerability she often buried deep. Even as she wrestled with her anxieties, one truth remained undeniable. She had committed to this cause. She was at a crossroads, to forge ahead or retreat into the safety of conventionality. The tension of that decision crackled in the air like electricity. As she gazed out the window at the dimming sky, Hannah felt the weight of her choice pressing down, a gravitational pull urging her forward. The greatest risks often came with the most significant rewards. The stage was set for her next steps, but challenges lurked just ahead. How would her colleagues respond? And could she muster the internal fortitude to face potential pushback with poise? She took a moment, inhaling deeply, as if breathing in courage itself. The forthcoming meeting would either solidify her vision or reveal unforeseen opposition. The stakes had never felt higher, yet Hannah knew one thing. This was just the beginning of her journey toward transformation. Now she needed to prepare, not just her ideas, but her soul for the tests that awaited. The countdown had begun, and she was ready to confront the unfolding narrative. What would the others bring to the table, and would they ultimately accept or reject her vision? Hannah arrived early on the day of the meeting, her heart thumping in her chest. The room was quiet, with sunlight spilling through the high windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced like fleeting thoughts in her mind. She took a moment to breathe, anchoring herself in the present. Today was the culmination of not just her planning, but a leap into uncharted waters, a chance to pivot her career and the educational environment around her. As the clock ticked closer to the designated hour, she arranged chairs in a circle, making the space feel inviting and collaborative. She envisioned the atmosphere, a departure from formalities, a nurturing ground for ideas, where every voice mattered. Yet, beneath that hopeful facade, anxiety gnawed at her. Would anyone show up? And if they did, would they listen? Slowly, familiar faces appeared. The younger colleague she had sensed shared her enthusiasm was among the first to arrive. Jamie took a seat beside her, offering a supportive smile that eased some of Hannah's tension. Others filed in, curiosity evident in their expressions. As each colleague took a seat, Hannah could feel a mix of anticipation and trepidation coursing through her veins. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady but soft. She shared her vision, highlighting the need for an educational paradigm shift, a blend of historical narratives and critical discussions designed to engage students actively. As she spoke, she noticed nods of understanding, flickers of interest, and glimmers of skepticism, an intricate tapestry of human response. But even amidst enthusiasm, Hannah's mind raced. She had prepared meticulously, detailing the structure of her proposed program, but there lingered an uncomfortable truth. She was not only wielding a proposal, she was challenging the status quo. The gravity of that realization pressed against her resolve. Questions flowed, and as discussions deepened, she navigated the diverse opinions with care. Some colleagues were invigorated by the prospect of shaking off traditional teaching methods, while others hesitated, clinging to the comfort of familiarity. Hannah found herself routinely addressing concerns, focusing on how the incorporation of historical lessons could alleviate fears about potentially radical transformations in classroom dynamics. With each inquiry from her colleagues, a newfound confidence emerged within her. Rather than defensively justifying her concepts, she began to embrace their doubts as opportunities for dialogue. This moment illuminated a critical epiphany. She was not just a source of ideas, but also a facilitator of constructive conversation, a bridge between innovation and hesitant tradition. Yet, as the meeting progressed, a quieter voice surfaced in the room. Mark, a veteran teacher with years of experience, raised his hand. "Hannah, while your ideas are innovative, don't you think we could risk overwhelming the students?" His tone was calm, but the implication of his concern loomed large. The challenge struck a chord within Hannah, igniting both defensiveness and reflection. In a split second, she faced a choice: recoil into a combative response, or confront the uncomfortable truth behind his question. She paused, measuring her words with the gravity they deserved. "Mark, I appreciate your perspective. Overwhelm is something we all need to be wary of. But what if we framed these lessons in a way that the students found not just educational, but compelling? It's about restructuring how we engage. A gradual approach could help harness their curiosity rather than drown them in changes all at once." Her response shifted something in the room. The collective mood lightened, the initial tension dissipating as collaborative energy surged. They began to brainstorm how they could phase in the new curriculum, breaking down the barriers between their fears and the vision on the table. As the meeting drew to a close, Hannah felt invigorated and terrified at once. She had opened herself up to potential dissent, but also newfound potential. She realized that her role extended beyond proposing a plan. It required assembling a coalition that could withstand the challenges ahead. With a sense of accomplishment, she thanked everyone for their contributions. As her colleagues filed out, a spark of resolve ignited. Each question and concern echoed in her mind, weaving together a narrative of collaboration rather than conflict. But when she collected her notes, a sense of unease shadowed her triumph. Was this truly a step in the right direction? Or had she unwittingly laid the foundation for deeper divisions? The lingering doubts threatened to overshadow her accomplishments. Hannah locked her office door behind her, contemplating the road ahead. The unanswered questions loomed large. How would she navigate the complexities of maintaining momentum? Could she orchestrate their diverse viewpoints into a unified vision? As she left the school, the night air nipped at her skin, mirroring the cold edge of uncertainty that had settled back over her thoughts. The transformative journey had indeed begun, but at what cost? Would she emerge as the catalyst for lasting change, or would she find herself trapped amidst opposing forces? Her next step was critical. She needed clarity in her intent, a solid strategy to ensure that their collective vision didn't flicker away into the night like the fading sunlight. Though excitement mingled with fear, one undeniable truth resounded within her. The real journey was just starting, and real change demanded not just courage, but unwavering resolve. How deep must she dig to uncover her true strengths in this illuminating yet perilous endeavor? The dawn of the following day cast a new light on Hannah's thoughts, illuminating the complexities she faced. The clarity she sought wasn't found in the early morning glow, but rather in a lingering anxiety swirling in her mind. Yesterday's meeting had been a tentative step forward, yet the fear of retreat haunted her. Was she prepared to lead this change, or had she bitten off more than she could chew? She spent the morning in her office, reviewing her notes, dissecting each comment made by her colleagues. She carefully considered how to address lingering reservations. Mark's concerns shadowed her thoughts. How would she alleviate fears about overwhelming students? She jotted down ideas, working to balance innovation with practicality. Each potential solution crisscrossed in her mind, testing her understanding of effective teaching methodology and the diverse learning styles of her students. As the day progressed, the sense of urgency intensified. The echo of her colleagues' voices lingered palpably in the air. They weren't just doubts, they were opportunities for innovation. Hannah drafted a follow-up email, inviting her colleagues to additional brainstorming sessions. Each letter she typed felt like a stitch in a larger quilt, piecing together a collaborative fabric that honored both her vision and their perspectives. But it was one voice that resonated the loudest, her own. The internal debate between confidence and self-doubt raged fiercely. Who was she to lead this charge? Would her ideas make waves or crash against the rocky shore of traditionalism? Yet a flicker of determination emerged amidst the uncertainty. Every successful change demanded a pioneer willing to step into the unknown. This revelation crystallized through her interactions. That afternoon, as she passed Jamie in the hallway, Hannah noticed Jamie's radiant enthusiasm. A conversation sparked between them, one fueled by shared passion and excitement. Jamie spoke animatedly about the potential of immersive experiences in education, and as they discussed practical approaches, Hannah ignited an idea. What if they created pilot projects that could test her new concepts on smaller scales? Start small to innovate boldly. Invigorated, Hannah returned to her desk and began drafting the framework for a pilot initiative. She would not just propose change, she would demonstrate its effectiveness. The project could serve as a proof of concept, minimizing resistance by showcasing tangible benefits. This way, she hoped to guide hesitant colleagues toward acceptance, framing the new curriculum as not a threat but an evolution. Yet with every step forward came lingering hesitation. What if these pilot projects failed? What if she miscalculated the impact on students? These questions tugged at her, threatening to unwound the fabric she was weaving. She paused, grappling with the weight of leadership. Was she willing to risk her professional reputation for a dream she believed in? Another internal voice urged her. Growth often blooms from the soil of vulnerability. As she typed furiously, a commitment solidified within her. She needed to embrace both potential success and failure, reaffirm her intent to evolve the educational landscape while inviting her colleagues to join her on this journey of exploration. She hit send, exhaling a long-held breath as the emails launched into cyberspace. Each click carried the weight of her ambition, and she braced herself for responses. Would they rally alongside her, or would she find herself alone in her pursuit? Evening fell, sickening doubts mingling with renewed hope. In her heart, a realization struck. Nurturing change required courage, not just from herself, but also from those around her. The path ahead was clear, her destination set, but navigating the terrain would necessitate her reliance on others' strengths and insights. The following day would demand an active approach to fostering connection among her colleagues. She needed to create an environment where everyone felt empowered to contribute, where their varying strengths formed a collective anchor amidst the tumult of transformation. As she gathered her belongings to leave, another thought struck. There was power not just in innovation, but also in adaptation. In blending the old with the new, perhaps she could alleviate the fear of change from those who clung to tradition. How could she honor their experiences while boldly forging a path to the educational future she envisioned? The layers of her dilemma unraveled slowly, revealing both the potential for solidarity and the risk of discord. Hannah stepped out into the brisk night air, the winds whispering tales of daunting journeys ahead. Both tension and excitement swirled in her gut, a dichotomy reflective of her nascent resolve. What awaited her in the next phase? How many obstacles lurked just beyond the horizon, waiting to test her commitment to this burgeoning vision? Hannah quickened her pace toward home, a flurry of ideas shaping her resolve, curious about the challenges to come. With each step, determination solidified. She was ready to find out, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the sun rose on a fresh morning, Hannah felt the weight of the day heavy on her shoulders. Her intention wasn't merely to initiate discussions, but to create a thriving environment for the pilots she had envisioned. With each tick of the clock, the pulse of her determination quickened, compelling her to prepare for her first brainstorming session. She could devise an elaborate plan, but the success of her vision depended not only on her ideas, but on the willingness of her colleagues to embrace them as well. Arriving at the conference room, she meticulously arranged the seating. A semicircle was a small but deliberate gesture, fostering openness and collaboration. She decorated the whiteboard with colorful markers, key words and phrases designed to spark inspiration. Each swirl of color represented hope, hope that her colleagues would engage, participate, and unlock their potential. But beneath this vibrant exterior, doubt continued to gnaw at her. It lingered, threatening to dim the vibrant hues of her intentions. Seated at the round table, Hannah sensed the unease radiating from the room. Colleagues shifted in their chairs, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The air thick with uncertainty hung heavily, intensifying her own apprehension. How could she transform their reservations into excitement? As she began to speak, her voice trembled slightly. "Thank you all for coming. I'm excited about the potential we have to innovate our curriculum," she managed, her heart racing. Anticipating resistance, she steered her conversation toward the benefits of small pilot projects, illustrating each with examples from her research on successful educational innovations. Each anecdote served as a salve, aimed at easing traditionalists' fears. "Are we prepared for the risk?" Mark interjected, skepticism etched across his brow. "You're suggesting we experiment with our students, and I want to know what support there is if things go wrong." The question landed heavily, a palpable challenge to her courage. The room's atmosphere shifted, tension coiling tighter around her. Hannah inhaled deeply, willing herself to confront the very essence of the challenge posed. "We can't evolve without risk," she retorted, her voice steadier than expected. "Every educator in this room has faced hurdles. Isn't there value in trial and error?" Mark's expression remained unreadable, but others began to nod slowly, considering her words. Strength sizzled within her as she realized a crucial dynamic. She was no longer alone in this venture. While others had worries, they also shared her aspirations. As the discussion progressed, her colleagues voiced concerns about time commitment, training, and student impact. Hannah leaned into their feedback, appreciating that each remark contained the seeds of accountability. They weren't wanting to resist change. They were craving assurance that it would navigate their students' educational landscape towards a luminous future. The brainstorming session shifted gears, transforming trepidation into dynamic collaboration. Ideas bounced around the table like bright sparks, illuminating innovative connections that had previously eluded them. Hannah noted the shift. Collectively, they delved into conversations about integrating technology and real-world challenges within their curriculum structure. The synergy created strengthened her resolve. They were creating not just a plan, but a shared vision. As the meeting drew to a close, Hannah felt a sense of accomplishment swelling in her chest. They had delved not only into the mechanics of education, but also into a deeper understanding of one another's anxieties and aspirations. She had taken them beyond the fear of failure, fostering an environment where shared ideas could blossom. However, the flicker of doubt still lingered, heartbeat quickening. What if their enthusiasm faded before implementation? When the last colleague left, she remained behind, pondering their discussions. The notes scattered across the table revealed more than just logistical ideas. They hinted at an emerging collective identity. Could she nurture this momentum? Could she solidify a united front, energizing them to embrace transformation fully? Determined not to squander this breakthrough, she planned her follow-up ahead of time, crafting an agenda that threaded together the ideas discussed. Yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Would they maintain this spark? Would they trust her to lead them into uncharted territory? Hannah stood alone in the dimming light of the conference room, grappling with the dawn of potential success while still unable to shake the absence of certainty. As she prepared to turn off the lights, a new thought arose, igniting a flicker of dread mixed with hope. What if the true trial lay not in implementing the pilots, but in sustaining enthusiasm? Stepping out into the cool evening air, Hannah felt a renewed sense of urgency. The next phase of her journey was already beckoning. How could she cultivate this burgeoning unity and remain resilient when faced with the inevitable challenges ahead? The journey had only just begun, and her resolve would soon be tested once more. The next morning, Hannah fought the remnants of her lingering doubts as she reviewed her notes for the follow-up meeting. She was excited yet anxious about the energy from the last brainstorming session. Would it carry over into this new phase, or would it dissipate like mist before the dawn? She arrived early, needing time to gather her thoughts. The conference room felt foreign at first, an expanse of potential yet unfilled, waiting for ideas or perhaps critique to breathe life into it. As her colleagues trickled in, she focused on maintaining her composure. Every smile felt rehearsed, deliberate. "Thank you all for being here again," she began, her voice firmer this time. "Our last discussion marked an important milestone. Let's build on that." But as the meeting commenced, Hannah perceived hesitation creeping back. Mark was present again, his brow furrowed with skepticism. "Are these pilot projects truly feasible? I still worry we're getting ahead of ourselves." His question echoed like a persistent shadow across the room. Just as her confidence began to ripple, his words snapped her back to the palpable risk they all faced. She processed the spike of frustration that surged within her. It wasn't just Mark's perspective, it was a reflection of her own doubts. "Yes, they are feasible," she replied, forcing a calmness into her words. "The risks you mention are part of the process, but isn't that the essence of education? To forge new paths even when the destination isn't clear?" A ripple of silence answered her. Hannah realized that the room awaited a tangible plan, a clear path. The weight of expectation pressed upon her, pushing her to confront her own vision more assertively than before. "Let's break into smaller groups to discuss specific strategies for these pilot projects," she proposed, attempting to shift the dynamic. Her colleagues murmured agreement, and for the first time, Hannah sensed a glimmer of acceptance. The atmosphere transformed as clusters formed, energies colliding in vibrant discussions. She hopped from one group to another, eager to listen and guide, but she soon noticed a tendency to retreat into previous limitations. A robust idea here, a practical suggestion there, yet somehow each group would return to familiar patterns of thinking. It frustrated her. Was she pushing too hard for innovation? Doubt seeped in again, prompting another confrontation with her own motivations. Was she truly advocating for her colleagues and students, or was she instead acting out of a fear of personal failure? The thought anchored her for a moment, a cold chill racing down her spine. Caught in reflection, a sudden realization dawned upon her. To foster genuine enthusiasm and ownership, she needed to empower her colleagues, to help them see their own potential instead of merely presenting her vision. Perhaps the key to their collaboration lay not just in innovative projects, but in each pilot's ownership over their results. Hannah called for quiet again, sharper this time. Let's redefine what success looks like for each of these proposals. Instead of viewing them solely through the lens of risk, let's outline goals that resonate personally with each of you. The room responded with cautious nods. For Hannah, it felt as if they were peeling back layers of resistance together. Each colleague reflected their ambition, aligning their professional aspirations with the pilots that could transform learning. As the meeting wrapped up, the sense of achievement pulsated through her. They were beginning to shift away from a culture of caution toward one embracing curiosity. Yet even amid the collective momentum, a voice within her questioned whether she could truly sustain this shift. Hannah returned home that evening, exhaustion weighing heavily on her, but also an unfamiliar lightness. The realization was illuminating. She wasn't meant to control the excitement or dictate the direction alone. Her role was to catalyze, to inspire ownership. But as she settled down to review her notes for the next steps, dread intertwined with her sense of triumph. Would her newfound approach resonate in the face of inevitable setbacks? Would her colleagues rally together, or would they fall back into the safety of complacency at the first sign of trouble? Just as she started to close her notebook, her phone buzzed. The message from Mark read simply, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Her heart raced. The challenge she had feared, the confrontation, loomed large. What could Mark's intentions be? Would this future collaboration deepen their resolve, or threaten the collective progress she worked so hard to cultivate? Hannah woke the next morning to a haze of anticipation. The sun peeked through the blinds, illuminating the dark corners of her room. But the clarity of the morning light did little to dispel her unease. The thought of meeting Mark gnawed at her. She couldn't help but wonder what he would bring to the table: supportive collaboration or a critical backlash. Her morning routine felt ritualistic, yet frayed. Each sip of coffee seemed to deepen her contemplation. As she approached the office, snippets of yesterday's meeting replayed in her mind, particularly the moment she called for personal accountability and ownership. That was a breakthrough, an acknowledgement that success lies not in mere compliance but in individual investment. Upon entering her office, she fished out her notes again, determined to prepare herself for the conversation ahead. The key points she had drafted about each pilot project floated to the surface. How they could be woven into her colleagues' aspirations. She recalled how a faint spark of engagement had momentarily illuminated their faces during the brainstorming session. Would it be enough to catalyze a shift in their collective mindset? As the hour approached when she was to meet Mark, uncertainty tightened its grip around her chest. What if Mark rejected her newfound strategy? What if her vision could not withstand scrutiny? Breathing in deeply, she clung to the realization that her role transcended that of a sole decision-maker. She was part of an intricate tapestry that could either fall apart with the first gust of skepticism or weave together in resilience. Mark entered the cafe just before meeting time. His presence commanded the space. He looked serious, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his jacket. Hannah's heart rate quickened as she gestured for him to sit. The air was thick with unspoken words, laden with tension. "Thanks for meeting with me," Mark began, breaking the silence that felt as heavy as lead. His eyes locked onto hers, revealing no hint of his intentions. "I thought it was time to discuss the direction we're heading. I have reservations," he continued, his voice steady but edged with concern. "I don't want us to implement a series of untested ideas based just on enthusiasm." Hannah felt a pang of frustration, but disguised it with an analytical frown. "And you think enthusiasm is misplaced?" she challenged, her tone sharp yet measured. "It's not that," he countered quickly. "I'm wary of pushing for radical changes without a robust plan that considers the challenges we face. What happens if these pilots don't succeed? It could undermine our credibility when we really need support." A flicker of doubt shook her resolve. Was she standing at the precipice of danger, driven by ambition without adequate foresight? "Mark, I understand your concerns, but I also believe in the potential this team possesses. We must redefine our thresholds for success. Our industry demands innovation, and stifling creativity in the pursuit of safety might lead us to stagnation," she responded, her voice stronger, fueled by the knowledge of her earlier breakthrough. "You make a compelling point," he admitted, but his expression remained unconvinced. "I just want us to be careful. Perhaps we can create a phased approach, start small, and build from there?" Hannah regarded him closely, aware that his hesitancy spoke to her own fears. The central conflict was revealing itself. Could she hold firm in her conviction for progress while navigating Mark's trepidation? As the discussion progressed, Hannah discerned an opportunity to put her theory into practice, empowering Mark to partake in shaping the change instead of viewing it as a threat. But could she show him how? She leaned forward, a new idea forming in her mind. What if we collaborated on a framework outlining initial steps for these pilot projects? We could work together, balancing innovation with a strategic base. Surprise flickered across Mark's face, followed by tentative interest. A collaborative framework could be worth exploring. In that instant, a turning point unfurled between them, illuminating their mutual stakes in success. Hannah could feel herself transforming, not only as a leader, but as a partner willing to actively listen. As they wrapped their meeting, a wave of optimism enveloped her, yet the undercurrent of doubt persisted. She had crossed a threshold, clung to her vision, and engaged Mark rather than push him away. Would her strategy survive the execution phase? The question lingered like a specter in the air. That evening, Hannah sat alone at her desk, contemplating the next steps. She paused at the sight of her reflection in the window, acknowledging the mantras she repeated to herself. The road ahead was fraught with hurdles, and the very notion of collaboration could unravel at any moment. Fixed upon that impending tension, she closed her laptop, knowing the drafts couldn't prepare her for the reality of implementation. Just then, another message buzzed through. "We need to discuss more than just the pilots." Her heart raced again, the stakes rising. What more could Mark have in mind, and how would that impact their plan? The sense of urgency pulsed around her as those daunting questions hung unanswered in the air. The next day, Hannah walked into her office with a determined stride. The previous night had been a restless one. Her thoughts spiraled around the uncertainty that now colored her collaboration with Mark. Their conversation had hinted at a deeper discussion yet to unfold, constantly lurking just beneath the surface. She set her belongings down and prepared for the day ahead, steeling herself for whatever revelations might come. The conversation with Mark had ignited something within her, an understanding that true leadership meant navigating the complex waters of collaboration and dissent, inviting others into the fold rather than pushing past them. As the school day unfolded, Hannah found herself responding to the familiar anxiety that accompanied change. Teachers walked by her door, their whispered doubts creeping in like shadows. Yet, instead of retreating, she welcomed her ambition, determined to transform her fears into action. When she learned of Mark's suggested meeting time, a rush of adrenaline propelled her forward. The meeting with him felt crucial, teetering on the edge of the personal and the professional. This was not simply about the pilot projects anymore. It was about the future direction of their educational approach and, by extension, their careers. Finally, the appointed hour arrived. Hannah took a deep breath and entered the conference room, where she found Mark already seated. The tension in the air could have been sliced with a knife. "Thanks for being deliberate about this," Mark began. His demeanor signaled his seriousness, yet there was an underlying willingness to engage. I want to ensure that we align not just on the projects, but on our overall vision, he continued, folding his hands tightly as if to anchor his thoughts. I believe we need broader support beyond our initial team. It's about our students, but it's also about our colleagues who remain skeptical. A light bulb clicked in Hannah's mind. She nodded, recognizing the validity of his perspective. Absolutely. If we can present this as a united front rather than a single initiative, we could alleviate concerns and make our case much stronger. Raising our colleagues' awareness makes them part of the solution. Mark seemed taken aback, but then he smiled slightly, relieved by her positivity. Exactly. What if we devised a series of presentations? We could tailor them to showcase different aspects over the course of the semester, dividing the pilot projects into digestible elements so everyone can see the potential firsthand. Their conversation deepened, fueled by Hannah's newfound urgency to blend their efforts. Each suggestion they exchanged woven into a fabric of shared goals. They spoke of integrating feedback loops to monitor the impact of the pilots, crafting strategies to ensure every teacher could see the transformative potential of their new curriculum. They spent hours defining roles, responsibilities, and timelines as they equipped themselves with the tools to launch this educational endeavor. With each passing moment, Hannah felt the tensions of uncertainty gradually give way to a sense of purpose. The shift wasn't just about the implementation of pilot projects. It was about forging relationships and mutual respect in the quest for innovation. When Mark finally stood to leave, a sense of accomplishment washed over Hannah. They had opened a channel of dialogue rich with promise, one that united their aspirations. "I'm grateful for this discussion," Mark said, his tone softer now. "I think we have a real shot at making our mark here together." With renewed vigor, Hannah left the meeting. Her colleagues would no longer be flat characters in her narrative. They were her collaborators in a shared story of transformation. Weeks passed as Hannah and Mark worked diligently, reaching out to the skeptical teachers, gathering allies who were ready to embrace change. Their meetings turned into brainstorming sessions where educators passionately debated over the meaning of success and how their curriculum could lead students into uncharted intellectual waters. Through this evolving process, Hannah learned that her role was not merely to champion a vision, but to foster an ecosystem that valued the contributions of others. She saw her colleagues grow as they discovered the impact of collective ownership. Their excitement ignited her own, reinforcing the belief that they were capable of tackling the challenges ahead. As the end of the semester drew near, Hannah stood before a room full of students, witnessing the vibrant discussions born from her trials. The pilot projects had surpassed all expectations. It wasn't just about infusing ancient stories into lessons. It was about reclaiming the narrative of education itself as a dynamic interaction between knowledge and experience. The flood of enthusiasm from her students, the spark of understanding, the realization that they were capable of crafting their own futures spoke of a success far greater than she ever envisioned. As she reflected on her journey, Hannah recognized that she had transformed from a solitary figure fighting against the tides of traditional education into a collaborative leader who had transcended her fears. She achieved not only personal growth, but also the empowerment of an entire team dedicated to fostering an innovative learning environment. With a deep, satisfied breath, Hannah recognized her worth and the transformative power of shared vision. Through that lens, she understood her grandfather's legacy, the Babylonians' resilience, and her own capacity for leadership, all intertwining to forge a pathway for generations to come. This was no longer a question of stepping forward into the unknown. It was a celebration of her achievement, a tangible affirmation of her commitment to growth, innovation, and connection. Now it's your time to reflect. You need to subscribe now to stay updated on exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Your voice matters. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this transformative journey. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss your theories about their incredible journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Be part of this community, and let's uplift each other.